I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Ignorant motherfuckers like you.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that Al-Qaeda is a threat. Because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia.
I think it's
Sorry-ass motherfucker got nothing on me, right?
Every time you've offered an opinion, you've been wrong. You said we should have gone into Iraq, despite the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction. You said that we should still have troops in Iraq to this day.
That guy ain't shit.
You indicated that we shouldn't be passing nuclear treaties with Russia, despite the fact that 71 senators, Democrats and Republicans, voted for it.
You ain't my bitch, nigga.
Which means not only were you wrong, but you were also confusing and sending mixed messages both to our troops and our allies.
Attacking me is not an agenda. Attacking me is not talking about how we're going to deal with the challenges that exist in the Middle East and take advantage of the opportunity there and stem the tide of this violence.
Not true.
But I'll respond to a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, Russia, I indicated, is a geopolitical foe. Not a, excuse me, it's a geopolitical foe. And I said in the same paragraph, I said, and Iran is the greatest national security threat we face.
What Governor Romney said just isn't true. He wanted to take them into bankruptcy without providing them any way to stay open. And we would have lost 1 million jobs. And that, don't take my word for it, take the executives at GM and Chrysler, some of whom were Republicans, may even support Governor Romney.
That guy ain't shit.
They'll tell you his prescription wasn't going to work. Now, Governor Romney says he's got a 5-point plan. Governor Romney doesn't have a 5-point plan, he has a 1-point plan. And that plan is to make sure that folks at the top play by a different set of rules. That's been his philosophy in the private sector. That's been his philosophy as governor. That's been his philosophy as a presidential candidate.
In 1 year, you provided $90 billion in breaks to the green energy world. Now, I like green energy as well, but that's about 50 years worth of what oil and gas receives. And you say Exxon and Mobil. Actually, this $2.8 billion goes largely to small companies, to drilling operators and so forth. But you know, if we get that tax rate from 35% down to 25%, why, that $2.8 billion is on the table. Of course it's on the table. That's probably not going to survive to get that rate down to 25%.
Attacking
Nothing Governor Romney just said is true. Starting with this notion of me apologizing. This has been probably the biggest whopper that's been told during the course of this campaign. And every fact checker and every reporter who's looked at it, Governor has said this is not true. When I came into office, the world was divided. Iran was resurgent. Iran is at its weakest point, economically, strategically, militarily, than in many years. And we are going to continue to keep the pressure on to make sure that they do not get a nuclear weapon. That's in America's national interest, and that will be the case so long as I'm president.
We're 4 years closer to a nuclear Iran. We're 4 years closer to a nuclear Iran.
You've been wrong.
And we should not have wasted these 4 years to the extent they've continued to be able to spin these centrifuges and get that much closer. That's number one. Number two, Mr. President, the reason I call it an apology tour is because you went to the Middle East and you flew to Egypt and to Saudi Arabia and to Turkey and Iraq. And by the way, you skipped Israel.
Just isn't true.
And by the way, you skipped Israel.
Not true.
Our closest friend in the region.
Ignorant motherfuckers like you.
If we're going to talk about trips that we've taken, when I was a candidate for office, first trip I took was to visit our troops. And when I went to Israel as a candidate, I didn't take donors. I didn't attend fundraisers. I went to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum there, to remind myself the nature of evil and why our bond with Israel will be unbreakable. And I saw families there who showed me where missiles had come down near their children's bedrooms, and I was reminded of what that would mean if those were my kids. Which is why, as president, we funded an Iron Dome program to stop those missiles.
And then in those nations, on an Arabic TV, you said that America had been dismissive and derisive.
Not true.
You said that on occasion, America had dictated to other nations.
You've been wrong.
Mr. President, America has not dictated to other nations.
That guy
we have freed other nations from dictators.
But that's not what you've done in the last 4 years.
That's the problem. In the last 4 years, you cut permits and licenses on federal land and federal waters in half.
Not true, Governor Romney.
So how much did you cut them by?
Not true.
By how much did you cut them by then?
Governor, we have actually produced more oil.
No. How much did you cut licenses and permits on federal land and federal waters?
Governor Romney, here's what we did. There were a whole bunch of oil companies.
I had a question, and the question was, how much did you cut them by?
You want me to answer
How much did you cut them by?
I'm happy to answer the question.
All right, and it is?
Here's what happened. You had a whole bunch of oil companies who had leases on public lands that they weren't using. So what we said was, you can't just sit on this for 10, 20, 30 years. Decide when you want to drill, when you want to produce, when it's most profitable for you. These are public lands.
Ignorant motherfuckers like you.
If you want to drill on public lands, you use it or you lose it.
And production on government land is down.
No, it isn't.
Production on government land of oil is down 14%.
Governor,
and production on gas is down 9%.
It's just not true.
It's
Wait, my
absolutely
bitch nigga.
Let's go, and that leads us, this takes us right to the next segment, Governor. America's longest war, Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Bob,
Governor, you get to go first.
You can't, okay, but you can't have the president just lay out a whole series of items without giving me a chance.
With respect, sir, you had laid out quite a program there.
Well, that's probably true.
We'll agree. We'll catch you up.
Motherfuckers like you.
Mr. President, I'm still speaking.
I'm sorry.
Mr. President, why don't you let me finish? I'm going to continue.
Finish,
I'm going to
Governor
continue.
Romney. Governor Romney, if you can make it short. See all these people? They've been waiting for you. Could you
Just going to make a point.
Then...
Any investments I have over the last 8 years have been managed by a blind trust. And I understand they do include investments outside the United States, including in Chinese companies. Mr. President, have you looked at your pension? Have you looked at your pension?
I've got to say.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension?
No, I don't look at my pension. It's not as big as yours, so it doesn't take as long.
Let me give you some.
Let
me give you some advice.
I don't check it that often.
Let me give you some advice. Look at your pension. You also have investments in Chinese companies. You also have investments outside the United States. You also have investments through a Cayman's trust.
We're way off topic here, Governor Romney.
We're a little off topic here.
Completely off the immigration.
Which is, I want to bring the rates down. I want to simplify the tax code. And I want to get middle-income taxpayers to have lower taxes.
Wait, my bitch
Philosophy
nigga.
on taxes has been simple, and that is, I want to give middle-class families and folks who are striving to get in the middle class some relief, some relief, some relief, some relief, some relief.